Hey everybody, it's Glenn, back in this video with the Star Wars The Force Awakens Black Series Resistance Trooper. In fact, regular viewers may remember me picking up this very action figure in my previous toy hunting video. Reading from the packaging back, soldiers of the Resistance are well trained and well equipped, but must rely on hit and run tactics when faced with the overwhelming might of the First Order. Here is the Resistance Trooper out of packaging, and somehow, in spite of watching another reviewer review this Resistance Trooper here on YouTube, I didn't realize until I saw him in person in store that this is a black guy. So I hope you guys pay more attention to my reviews than I did to that reviewer. I think initially Hasbro using a very similar coloured plastic for both the flesh colour of the hands and the fabric colour of the trousers made me think that he was wearing gloves to match the colour of the trousers. But then I was like, oh, it's a black guy, and way to go Hasbro for continuing to stick it to all those dumb racists who started that boycott Star Wars campaign over the casting of John Boyega as Finn. Now, I've seen Star Wars The Force Awakens twice now and don't recall seeing this particular Resistance Trooper, but I'm going to guess he was one of the troops that bundled out of the Resistance transport prior to us seeing General Leia for the first time. Comparing the Resistance Trooper to the Poe Dameron in his Resistance fatigues that came in the 2-pack with the Riot Control Stormtrooper, and you definitely get a sense of symmetry between the two, what with them sharing very similar naturalistic earthy tones. They look like they're both part of the same unit. And the deco does a really good job of accentuating all the sculpted creases of the uniform, but then the paint washes and dry brushing also contribute to a very lived in and worn look that's in contrast to the brilliant white we often see with the Stormtroopers. To me, it certainly conveys the idea that the Resistance is much more of a grassroots operation lacking the resources that the First Order has. Taking a closer look at the helmet, and I do think it is a bit reminiscent of the helmets worn by the Rebel troopers on Endor in Return of the Jedi, or maybe I'm just making that connection because it's also green. A cool feature of the helmet is that this lower part here is articulated, so we are able to flip it up, and then the yellow clear plastic part, the visor, is fixed there. You can clearly see he's rocking a tash there, and as such I think there's too much detail here specific to this particular actor to be able to army build Resistance troopers in the way that you can with Stormtroopers, what with them being ultimately faceless. The Resistance Trooper comes with this blaster accessory, which you may recognize as it's the same one that came in the 2-pack Poe, which is not a complaint as I guess it's standard issue among the Resistance. However, like Poe's, I wish with it they had attempted at least some deco so that it matches the worn lived-in look of the overall Resistance Trooper. The Trooper has 2 gripping hands, but really it's his right hand which is sculpted with the trigger finger to hold it. Then he can also be posed holding the blaster in both hands. Now typically I do complain about the lack in range of articulation in the elbow of Hasbro's Black Series, what with them being weapon-wielding characters, yet here I think he's striking a fairly naturalistic pose. And as I'm already talking about posing, what better time than now to look at the articulation. So his head is able to rotate side to side, then he does have a neck hinge which moves the head down this much and then up this much. At the shoulder his arms rotate and then they hinge up quite far. There's rotation at the elbow, and this is essentially then a single hinge, bringing the lower arm to just less than a right angle to the upper arm. There's rotation of the hand at the wrist, and then the hand is also hinged, moving up and down. Now his right hand also rotates at the wrist, but then the wrist hinge on the right hand differs to the left in that it hinges up and down, whereas his left hand hinges in and out, if that makes sense. He has waist rotation, which is under his jacket there, and then he does kind of crunch very slightly forward, and then the tiny, well, not really back at all. At the hips his legs articulate. They probably would articulate more if they weren't inhibited by the way the jacket skirts around his hips. Then he has upper leg rotation followed by a double jointed knee. Then a production defect I've noticed on mine is this ugly mark here. Let's, I guess, pretend he's torn his pants in combat. At the ankle, his feet hinged backwards and forwards, and they also have that ankle rocker pivot that I love. And taking advantage of that ankle rocker pivot, this is him stood at its widest stance possible, kind of inhibited by the nature of his jacket. So all things considered, and I think this Resistance Trooper is really just for Star Wars completists. Not that that's a knock on him, as I think the execution here is pretty good. It's just for the more casual fan, it's hard to justify the price on a blink and you'll miss them appearance. I think me myself, had I not seen him for the first time in store within an hour of seeing Star Wars The Force Awakens for the second time, I'd have likely not got him. He benefited from me still being on that Force Awakens high. Anyway, if this video has left you hungering for more Star Wars, then click the video on the left for my review of the Toys R Us exclusive First Order Snowtrooper Officer. Alternatively, click the video on the right to see just what else I stumbled upon during my toy hunt in which I picked up this Resistance Trooper. And I hope to see you all next time. Bye.